scientists landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, happy Fantopia Friday, my friends. I hope that you had a very happy holiday, and I hope that you have something fun planned tomorrow night to ring in the new year. I am going to be drinking tequila and doing karaoke with my girlfriends. So wish me luck. This could be quite exciting, and needless to say, I probably won't make it to midnight, but I'm going to have a good time. I have an exciting show tonight, and I really feel that each week I am finding people that I resonate with, people that I respect, that I want to bring on the show, and I want to expose all of you to the best, and it's hard to find. So I've made it my goal to never use the term ufology again. In fact, I need to just take that right off my bio everywhere. From this moment forward, to me, ufology is dead. We need to find a new way to frame this topic because there is so much garbage going on in quote-unquote ufology. And in 2017, I am going to do my best, as are other people that I align myself with, to clean this up and to find people that are bright, that are dedicated, that work with integrity, that have ethics, professionalism, and we are going to make a change. So I really, truly hope that we can say goodbye to people that just simply want to do this to get a date or to sell a book or get into a conference or make money off of TV shows and other people's hard work. So those are my thoughts, but we're going to make some good change, and I hope that all of you join me for 2017 because it's going to be a great year. I hope all of you are safe and happy tomorrow night. My guest tonight is someone that I just have to say, the more I get to know him, read his work and everything, I have a tremendous respect for him. He's funny. He's a musician, so of course I have to like him. He has a lot of important work to share about not only cattle mutilations, about the Native American culture, about hotspots, portals. He's brilliant, and I am excited to have him here tonight. I want to take a minute before I read his bio to you so you can know how cool he is, in case you didn't already. But I want to thank all my friends for listening all over the world, sending me messages, getting on UFOclassified.com and spreading the word. I appreciate you. It is important to me that you are happy with what I'm doing because I'm here for you every week. I really truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. My guest tonight is just really frickin' spicy. Chris O'Brien, who started in 1989, so over a decade in New York City. He was a professional designer, musician, there we go, an actor and a model, and I can see that. Because, Chris, I've got to just tell you before, I've been watching some of these videos with you, and you are quite a handsome lad.
Okay, if you say so. You know, I'm almost 60 now. Back when I was in my 20s, and about 50 pounds lighter. Yeah, Armani looked good on me.
Ooh, baby! But I mean, your bio is incredible. But you moved to the San Luis Valley in South Central Colorado, and that's a hot spot. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And specifically, you're in Crestone, right?
Correct. I was in Crestone. Yeah, 13 years.
Wow, that's a cool place. I'm really excited about that. But you're an investigative journalist. You're an anomalist, which we'll explain in a little bit. But you have written several books, and including The Mysterious Valley, which was back in '96, and Enter the Valley. I've got a book coming of yours, Stalking the Trickster, which I'm excited about. And you had mentioned to me earlier that it's out of print. So you guys better go to Amazon and get a used copy of it, like I did. I'm really excited to read that. Stalking the Herd, you are a show host on the Paracast, and you've done that since 2009. God bless you.
Well, yeah, 10 years. Well, the show's been on 10 years. I've been on for going on 7 years, yeah.
Wow. That's a no wonder you're so spicy and you put people in their
And we've never repeated a show and never missed a show. So it's 52 weeks out of the year we have new shows. So we're pretty proud of that.
Well, it's a great show, and I will tell you, I was so bummed, but I was on the Paracast, and it was a time you were sick, and
Right.
so I was really bummed about that because I wanted to talk to you back then. But I will say that I was a little bit nervous to be on the Paracast because you guys call it you call some things out.
Oh yeah, we sort of pride ourselves in. Let's put it this way: if a guest comes on, extraordinary claims require some evidence or some supporting data to back up, whatever particular claim or claims that they're making. We do occasionally run into problems with guests hanging up because they're not aware that we're more of a 60 minutes type approach to all these various subject matters. We ask tough questions, and my job is to keep things light and playful, crack some jokes, and then be able to ask the guest a question about their topic that they don't know the answer to, and then gleefully supply them with the answer.
So are you the good cop or the bad cop?
Well, it depends on the guest. Generally, we trade off. We tag team. We like to keep our guests back on their heels, if that's what they really deserve. We have Gene and I, our BS meters. I can't even talk about. We helped design the BS meter factory. So, we really have well honed sensibilities about subject matter. I've read. I have a library of a couple thousand books. I've read them all. A lot of them I've read multiple times. I'm extremely up to speed on the history of paranormal phenomena, from going all the way back to Charles Fort to, the most recent books by Nick Redfern or David Weatherly or, any number of people that are prolific and always coming out with new titles. I really do attempt to be as up to speed and well versed in all these various subject matters. It's not only ufology or that UFO word,
Yeah.
or anomalous aerial objects, or unexplained aerial phenomena, whatever acronym you want to use, UAPs, AAOs. I'm really fascinated by location-specific phenomena, whether it's haunted sites, portal areas, religious miracles. My interests run through the wide spectrum of unexplained phenomena. That's why I like to have to be referred to as an anomalist, because that's basically what I'm into. I'm into the data that science normally throws out so that they can have 1,000 samples that kind of agree with one another, so you can get an average mean, and they throw out the high and the low. I have a tendency to focus on the anomalous data, and hence the term.
And I love the fact that that you grasp the fact that you can't just look at one subject. That this is an all-encompassing thing, and I think sometimes we get so focused on, we're only studying UFOs, and you're missing most of the puzzle. Makes no sense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I spent a solid 10 years in one of what I think is one of the most amazing hotspot sort of window gateway areas in North America. I looked at everything. I looked at unusual military activity, government activity, aberrant societal behavior, strange weather, weird sort of animal behavior. I think everything on some level is tied together. There's a correlation or a corresponding link between pretty much everything. And when you start to see patterns of unusual societal behavior accompanying waves of UFO sightings, and outbreaks of fires and unusual amounts of roadkill, I think there's an underlying connective element that ties these things together, and that's one of the reasons why you mentioned the Stalking the Tricksters book. That's, people for years were saying, well, what do you think's going on, Chris? Well, what's behind all this stuff? And I really had to really think about that, and I finally came up with a mechanism that seems to tie all these things together, and that's the trickster. And there's an element of absurdity and of incongruity and just scratch your head, make you go, what? Right. There's elements of this ridiculousness, if you will, that seems to permeate all through variant and divergent, allegedly divergent paranormal phenomena. So I think that the absurdity, the tricksterism element is something that seems to tie all these things together. And I'm sure later on in the show we can go ahead and explore that a little bit. Don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse here.
No, get the cart ahead of the horse, because I think this is perfect. I think the trickster is, the more I learn about it, the more I read, it is absolutely fascinating. I think you are right on the mark to go here and to get that knowledge out, and I can't wait to get my book.
Well, basically, I think it boils down to, especially in UFO sightings, I think it's a classic textbook example of this. I'll get a report from somebody who I know, who I trust. I don't think they're punking me or trying to pull my leg or something. But some rancher or farmer will call up and say, "Wow, I had this thing just fly over the ranch, or something landed out of my back 40, or appeared to." And I'll go ahead and investigate the case and take all the information and stuff. And then oftentimes I'll run into them, X amount of time later, whether it's months or a year or two later, and they'll go, you remember when I called up and reported that X, Y, or Z? There's something that I didn't tell you. And I feel comfortable enough now to tell you. But back then, I knew if I had told you this, you would have thought I was nuts, and you wouldn't have taken, my experience seriously. And it's amazing how many times that I've had people tell me something inexplicable. A classic example would be a guy saying, yeah, this weird fog descended on his ranch, and he went out and he saw these really brilliant blue lights through the fog, and his animals were all freaking out. Well, what he didn't tell me was that the fog was totally locked in by his fence line. As soon as you went over the fence line, there was no fog. So it was a perfect rectangle of fog on his ranch.
Oh, wow.
Just weird, inexplicable things like that. That would be a classic example. Another one would be a farmer went out into his field, and he said, I had a mutilated animal. And then he tells me later on, he says, the field right next to where the pasture was a couple of acres of quinoa, and all the blossoms had just come out. And he said, when I went out there the following morning, there was not one blossom. They had been vacuum cleaned up. There was not one on the ground. There was not one on any of the plants. And I had I'm not going to have a quinoa harvest.
Oh, my God.
So it's these kinds of inexplicable details that tend to be left out when they occur, because the person feels so uncomfortable that if they mention that, they think that the investigator or the law enforcement agent or whoever it is will think they're nuts, and they won't take any of it. It's almost like a baby in the bathwater thing. As soon as you mention this thing, it's like, oh, this person obviously is is delusional or whatever. So I've always kind of had a sense and a feeling that there were elements to many of these inexplicable events that could not be explained with a rational, sort of explanation, or just, don't even make sense. Period. It's inconceivable that they could even be an element. So that's what kind of got me into really investigating the trickster archetype as it occurs in Jungian psychology. Of course, the trickster is one of a constellation of archetypes that Carl Jung figured out that his teacher Sigmund Freud came up with the idea of the unconscious, which before Jung came up with the idea there was no unconscious in science or in medicine, in the study of the mind. And it was through Jung's work with Freud that he came up with the idea of not only is there an individual consciousness, but we share a collective unconscious. And within that collective unconscious, it doesn't matter where you are on the planet, you're going to have basic archetypal symbols that are represented globally. And they're starting from the shadow would be the most basic one, the mother, the child, the trickster, the king, the queen, the god, the goddess, the mandala, the anima, the animus, the opposite gender aspect that we all have within ourselves. So the trickster, however, is the oldest and the most primal of the archetypes that has facial features. The older ones, the child, the mother, the shadow, the anima, the animus, they're all they lack personification. They lack identity. It's only with facial features that you are able to identify something. For instance, all the Venus figures from the Neolithic period, that thousands of these carvings of very robust women, many of them pregnant. And every single one of these things lacks facial features.
You're right.
So the trickster is the oldest and the most primordial of these collective archetypal symbols that actually has facial features. And I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh my God, that is interesting.
And so, but what we have here is we have something that with facial features, then you would think that would indicate self-awareness, that would indicate with self-awareness obviously comes personal agenda, having a moral sense, let's say, and having some sort of rationale for action. But the trickster in the classic, fundamental definition doesn't have that. The trickster is not self-aware. It doesn't have an agenda. It's amoral. It's like a 3-year-old child, a little boy beating his 2-year-old sister on the head with a baseball bat, jumping up and down, having so much fun, not realizing he could kill her. So it's that amoral sense of neither by design or by accident, something sort of liminal or in between, sort of on a threshold, standing in the doorway, not in one room, not in the other room, but sort of in between. So by literal definition, the trickster is neither young or old, black or white, positive or negative. It tends to be a good dancer. Since it's not black or white, kind of like Michael Jackson, I guess, would be by literal definition would be the ultimate trickster, not black or white, male or female. Dance is good.
Oh God, I'm sorry. I just
bad joke.
No, I laughed. I thought that was really great.
Well, yeah. I guess when he kind of did the robot sped up back in the
that was hot.
early 70s, or did his moonwalk.
Yeah.
Which was actually done first in the 30s, I think, by a dancer. But anyway, so I started looking at the trickster archetype and thinking, well, could this be sort of a some sort of mechanism that ties together all paranormal phenomenon? And it wasn't until I really started researching the hundreds and hundreds of trickster types that are found all over the world. The book is an encyclopedia of different trickster forms from around the world, from Africa, Australia, the Pacific, South America, North America, Asia. I go through and pick out the most readily identifiable trickster characters globally, and then when I was doing all this research, I was looking for something that tied them all together. And it all of a sudden dawned on me that they're all described as shapeshifters. And that was a real breakthrough in my my thinking, because if they're shapeshifters, and that is a commonality that seems to permeate through globally through the global trickster phenomenon, then perhaps anything that is described in the modern world as being able to shapeshift could have some sort of mechanistic connection with that trickster element, or that trickster energy, for lack of a better term. And so that really did jumpstart my thinking, and it really put me on a path of discovery. And as it turns out, the trickster, and people, to really get into what the trickster is, I really had to redefine it and go against conventional academic thinking, because there are different types of tricksters, although they all seem to be, like I said, connected with this whole ability of shapeshifting. But there's your classic sort of anthropomorphic animal trickster, whether it's coyote or raven or the great hare or the spider. And these are trickster forms that are very, very ancient and old, and tend to be have the attribution of changing nature, so that inadvertently it benefits man, whether it's raven creating light out of darkness, or the kappas creating dry land where there's ocean, the kappas in Hawaii, or coyote, who helps is really instrumental in the whole creation process. It doesn't matter where you go around the world. If there's an insect or an animal that is described as a trickster, that is basically what it's known for, is creating something beneficial for humans that has in some way changed or harnessed aspects of nature. And then you have a second type that would be not as ancient, not as primordial, but your tragic hero. And classic example of that would be Prometheus, who stole fire from Zeus and gave it to humans inadvertently, which helped benefit them. And generally these tragic heroes do something like that. And whether it's by accident, most of the times it's by accident, or it's done unconsciously, they're always punished for it by the gods. So Prometheus, was forced to push a boulder up a mountain every day, and then an eagle would come and peck out his liver, and then he would heal overnight, and then have to push the boulder back up every day. Loki.
Good Lord, we're going to head to break, and I hate to stop you right there, but oh my Lord, I knew this was going to be a good one. And I want to just say before we go to break, you need to if you go get a book today, Stalking the Herd by Chris O'Brien, and this is an amazing book. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I appreciate all of you for listening. Find me on Facebook at UFO Classified. This is KCOR, the best digital network on the planet, and we will be right back.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil
what if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
When danger is imminent, will you be prepared? Now many mobile devices can bring you critical information from local sources you trust. With the unique sound and vibration, wireless emergency alerts keep you in the know wherever you are. Learn more at ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
There's a show that's not afraid to ask the questions no one else will ask. Not afraid to say
what no one else will say.
Friday nights at 7 p.m. Listen to Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie, where no topic is off limits. Conspiracy theories, paranormal activities, hoaxes, the unexplained. It's what we talk about. Question everything. Trust no one. Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie. Friday at 7 p.m. on the KCOR Digital Radio Network out of Las Vegas, Nevada.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes. Welcome back, everybody, and happy almost New Year. I'm Erica Lukes. Happy to be here on this kind of wintry night in Salt Lake City. I'm getting ready for a good New Year's Eve party with my girlfriends. I think it'll be a wonderful way to bring in the new year, and I hope you have something fun planned and you'll be safe. I hope you're enjoying my show tonight, because I am enjoying every second of it, and I'm taking notes, and I know that my friend and fellow researcher Jeff Cox is tuning in from Japan, because he's been messaging me, and we both research here in Utah, and we've got some things to talk about a little bit later with regard to Skinwalker Ranch. But right now I am here with Christopher O'Brien, who has written several books. Stalking the Herd is one of them that is tremendous. And he has been on Coast to Coast. He's been on many different TV shows. He is an investigative journalist, a researcher, and has, I think, the best ideas with regard to looking at these hot spots and then looking at the different types of phenomena that you're seeing, and not just investigating a site and putting it away in a little bin, but doing the homework and looking at the bigger picture with regard to military installations, with regard to the cultural beliefs, and putting it all together, because there is a huge pattern here, and Christopher O'Brien does that so beautifully. When we left for the break, we were talking about kind of redefining the trickster terminology and the way that kind of people were viewing that in academia. But so let's continue where we left off, because this is really a great conversation.
Yeah, well, again, just to recap, after writing my 3 books about my investigations all through the 90s in the San Luis Valley, which is the largest alpine valley in the world. It's located in south central Colorado. It's the big valley that goes north from Taos, New Mexico, basically. I spent 10 years, monitoring a 10,000 square mile Petri dish, as I like to refer to it. Put 300,000 miles on my truck in 6 years, and covered everything. Again, I didn't put blinders on. I didn't narrow my focus at all. I was into ritual occult crime, treasure legends, Native American legends and traditions, healing modalities of the curanderas and the brujas and the brujos, everything from elementals, trooping fairies, strange crypto sightings, a platypus, for instance, in a high mountain lake. That's one of my favorite ones. Of course, your ubiquitous UFO waves that, at the height of a 6-year flap of activity, I got 17 calls in one day that represented 5 separate UFO sighting events. 200 cattle mutilations I investigated. And the list goes on and on and on, whether it's unusual geophysical properties, a low-altitude military operations area training region just over the mountains to the east. I had my eyes open and my ears open for everything, and I meticulously documented everything. I just sent you, Erica, the San Luis Valley event log, which is over 100 pages. And
Thank you.
That's only the events that had 10 data points in it. If I had included every story that I heard, there'd be thousands and thousands of events in there. It had to have a date, a time, a duration, a description, a location, data points that later on I think might come in useful with somebody doing number crunching and analyzing. Quite a. I'm very proud of this database. It's
You should be, and I have to just tell you thank you for sharing that, because that's the only way that we are going to figure out what this is, if we share information, and because one person has an idea and another person could come up with something completely different, but it's working together and trying to put it together it's really going to be how we get there.
Yeah, and that's the only way. I'm a team player. My data is available to anybody that wants it. I don't care if you're some sort of stringer for the CIA. I don't care if you're some other researcher in any realm. From anywhere. I believe that complete transparency and sharing of data is absolutely imperative. There's no hoarding cases. If somebody has a good idea about an investigation that I'm involved with, by all means, front and center. Come on, let's hear your ideas. I'm a team player. I'm not into this for self-aggrandizement or to become rich and famous or sell a lot of books. The only reason why I write books is because I'm forced to. I'm the only one that can write them.
Right.
So, anybody that's in this business of ufology, and I use that term very specifically, if somebody is making, money to pay their bills and to cover their nut, with very few exceptions, be very, very wary.
Absolutely.
Of what they have to say and what their conclusions are. There's very few people that are in this as a career whom I would give the time of day to. All your so-called A-list people that do all the conferences, that write all the books. There's very, very few of them. I can almost count them on one hand who I take seriously. And the rest of them are in it to every 6 months, 8 months, come up with some new twist or case to keep them, in the public eye, to create, a buzz, to create more notoriety. And to me, it's all entertainment. And, I could start naming names and pointing fingers, and as Erica knows darn well, I could. But, I'm trying to take the high road here. I've been told by some of my friends that I should become a little less honest and pointed with my criticisms of the field. And if people want to believe in space wars going on over their heads and security men on Mars and time travelers going back as children to the Gettysburg Address and training with Barack Obama to go to Mars, if people really want to believe that stuff, then geez, I got a really gorgeous bridge in Brooklyn that I'll sell you. It's all, I think we're seeing the birth of a high-tech religion.
Yes,
Benevolent Space Brothers are
exactly.
now going to replace outmoded deities that have kind of worn out their usefulness. And, if you want to believe the Benevolent Space Brothers are coming here to solve all your problems for you, then, whatever. Whatever floats your your dinghy with all the holes in it.
This is what I love about you, just listening to you interview and all of this. I mean, it's true. I mean, when you look at the people that are continually on the speaking circuit, I mean, it's like, okay, now wait a minute, and you actually, and it was been very interesting for me to kind of get out there and to talk to some of these people. And when I started this, I had a completely different impression of some of these people, and I respected them. And the more I've seen them in action, or just seen what they're about, it's like, oh my God, there's so many good people that are looking for answers, that are just looking for some semblance of the truth, or to be acknowledged, or to to find somebody to share a story with. And they're being taken advantage of, and they're being fed full of a load of crap. And that is really unfortunate. And I think the older I get and the more I get into this field, I mean, there is something that is worth studying, and there is something that we need to focus our attention on. And it is not subscribing to or being a member of or doing things like that. It's donating money to good research, to getting out there and learning more and collecting your own data and then sharing it. And I just think, God, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I think for the average person in this day and age, it's not like it was when I was back in as a kid and going into high school and stuff, where there was no internet, there were no cell phones, there were 3-4 stations on TV. None of them covered any of this subject matter. You were forced to read. You were forced to go out and actively seek the research and the information to further your understanding. Now everything is at your fingertips. We have an attention span that used to be called 8 seconds. Now I think it's about 2 seconds. People tend to pay attention to the loudest squawking, basically. And so, the people that are squawking the loudest and attracting the most attention are the ones that people tend to buy into. And, everybody, I think, on some level is looking for validation of something that they feel intuitively is real or true. And unless you have the kind of background and well-rounded research under your belt, you're going to be totally swayed by your culture. And unfortunately, culture is not our friend. Culture is everything but your friend. And if you're not willing to do the heavy lifting of reading the books, identifying good sources of information and grounded thinkers, unless you're in a position to do that and spend the time like I have, reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, and picking apart particular individuals' arguments, and working with friends to analyze sets of data. Unless you're in a position to do that, you're going to go with what resonates with you. And if you're someone that thinks that angels are coming to save us, or demons are coming to eat us, or ETs are coming to solve all our problems, or to save their dying race by getting dead cattle parts and rubbing it into their skin, and all this just cockamamie theorizing out there, if it rings true to you, then you're going to put your little,
right,
customized blinders on, and that's all you're really going to you're just looking for stuff to validate foregone conclusions. And,
Right.
and to me, that is not intellectually honest, and I have no time for it.
And that brings up a really great point, because the thing that I found with, when I was with MUFON, and I will say that there are so many good people that I love and will always talk to and respect involved in MUFON. I truly believe that. But it was interesting to see, though, how some people, I mean, they were investigating and using the scientific method, but they were coming at it with bias. And that is so, again, it's like what you were talking about. It's like they're putting their own perceptions and belief systems on this, where you really, that's not what good science is. That's not how we're going to get answers.
No, that's not objectivity. Having a foregone conclusion and blinders on to only accept or recognize data that supports your foregone conclusion is not being intellectually honest. And there's quite a number of very popular, well-respected researchers that are the worst offenders in this regard. They have already made it up in their minds, and so they're running around looking for the data to support their foregone conclusions. And that, to me, is really intellectually dishonest. And I've been very vocal about specific individuals who I feel are doing the field a gross disservice. This new generation of people that are interested in these subjects are being indoctrinated with intellectual dishonesty. And it's what can I say, Erica?
No, absolutely. So let's
I've
talk
got a
about
problem with that.
No, and God bless you and amen. I'm right there with you. But who are some of the people in the field that my listeners need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, I could go with the obvious ones: the Richard Hoaglands, the David Wilcox, anybody that has anything to do with the disclosure, exopolitics. It's all just a dog and pony show. Stephen Greer, Linda Howe. God bless her. She's done so much as a woman in the field, and she trained me to interview people 20 plus years ago. But boy, I tell you, if you disagree with her, her conclusions, you're the enemy, and she will do everything she can to make you squirm and make other people think that you're something that you're not.
Wow.
So,
and that's ethical right there. That's
Andrew Basiaggio, Laura Eisenhower. You want me to go on? I mean, I could.
I do.
On. There's so many of them. Jonathan Reed, people that have been caught red-handed with hoaxing. Jaime Maussan, you got to love him, but man, the guy doesn't have a BS meter within 100 miles of him. Everything gets lumped into one big sensational box, and out of every 10. Or let's say out of every 20 pieces of visual information that he touts equally, there's one or two that should be looked at very seriously, and the others you could just throw out because it's obvious what they are. So I think a lot of it has to do. I think there's a lot of, like you said, well-intentioned people out there, people with good hearts that aren't knowingly contributing to being part of the problem, but they're so stupid. They don't have the discernment. They don't have the intellectual capacity to determine what is obviously a hoax or what's obviously a bird or an insect flying by, and they just because they're so wanting to believe anything that comes along that could possibly be something high strange, that they jump all over it. And a person like Jaime, who's in the business of sensationalizing the subject matter, is a classic example of somebody who, has wonderful stuff in and amongst his data and his evidence, but it represents 10%, 20%.
Right.
So, I don't get me. I don't want to slag too many people.
No. But I think it's important because I think people need to, and I really truly believe, like all of my listeners, I mean, that they're looking for good information. They're looking for education. They're looking for the truth. And I think that I feel like, and I know you do too, that's kind of what we need to do since we're in a public role, we need to give people good information and let them make up their own minds and let them live their own path. But we have to get away from this really nasty business of self-importance and making money, and we need to focus on research.
Too.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
a lot of it's ego. A
Oh, yeah.
lot of it's ego. These people are, I mean, just, Stephen Greer is a classic example. I mean, I've known Stephen for 23 years. I met him before he was anybody, before anybody knew about him. I met him, and the reason why he goes to Crestone every year now for 23 years is because I turned him on to the place. And of course, every time he goes, he went in the early years. There'd be UFO activity everywhere, but in Crestone, which I always thought was kind of curious. It's like he didn't give good directions or something. But when you're laying your hands on the doctor and he's channeling a group's coherent thought sequencing to the cosmos, that's troublesome in my mind. Especially when there's, God knows how many thousands of dollars attached to the process of being trained to be a representative to the cosmos of humanity. Whoever elected him ambassadors, humankind's ambassador to the universe, by the way. And where are all these free energy devices that he collects all this money from investors and is always promising, some device in 90 days. Where are all these devices?
Right. That's an interesting question. And it is quite fascinating. And I have to say, just to be devil's advocate for a second, I mean, I do believe that meditating and, I know that you had a meditative practice. I don't know if you still do, but
I'm in a constant state of meditation. My mind is just crystal clear most of the time.
Oh, that's good. Not mine.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's
to a fault, actually.
Oh, but I think that there absolutely is a conscious connection, and I think that you can. Mm-hmm. I think that that's an area that needs to be studied. I do.
Right. I absolutely agree. And like I've told Stephen, I don't know how many times, Stephen, your message is more important than you are.
Yes. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, back to the trickster, like we have a question here in the chat room, and someone was wondering, give us an example of the trickster that most people will be familiar with.
A Bernie Madoff.
He's
a shamanic trickster, a parasitic trickster. Remember, I mentioned there were various types of tricksters: the anthropomorphic animals, the tragic hero. Whether it's Loki giving the fishing hook to the Scandinavians, or Anansi giving the oral tradition to the Africans, or Prometheus giving fire. Then you have those first two types, the animal and tragic hero, are the inadvertent tricksters that are have a symbiotic relationship with humanity. Then you have your shamanic tricksters that are involved in tricking you. Oftentimes as a means for self-enrichment, like a Bernie Madoff, or your sleight of hand magicians, Chris Angel, David Blaine, Harry Houdini, who are tricking you just because they can and because they can make some dough off of it. Then you have politicians who. Donald Trump is a classic trickster figure. I mean, he campaigns on draining the swamp, and then he puts in a cabinet worth $17 billion. Some of them are, lobbyists for their own, particular concerns, whether it's energy, pharmaceuticals, whatever. So you have kind of a parasitic trickster type, which is more of a modern sort of incarnation of a trickster type, and they have tremendous power if they're able to take somebody and fleece them out of money. Sean David Morton, classic example, fleecing millions of dollars out of trusting investors to make psychic stock picks and stuff, or whatever the hell the SEC brought him up on charges for. So those are your basic different types of trickster forms. Now, what was the question again?
Just like some classic examples of the trickster that we would know. So I think that's really, I think you answered it perfectly. And we've got another question before we go to break. But what are the ufologists that you think that we need we're just going to strike the ufologists out of there. But who are the people that are researching this, anomalists that are worthy of, that we should be looking at for good information?
Well, there's a lot of them, and of course you don't really hear about them because they're impassioned by their work and not by trying to get a cult of personality built up around them. Head and shoulders above everybody is Ray Stanford. Nobody comes close to the type of very, very amazing scientific principles that he's identifying within the ufological realm. He's spent many years now analyzing analog films that he's taken of UFOs, and he's starting to really make a buzz behind the scenes in the aerospace community. Hopefully he'll be publishing soon. I have his complete biography that I've written that's been done 7 years. He won't let me release it. He is by far the most impressive person I've ever encountered. You have someone like David Marler, if you want to get niche about it. In terms of the Black Triangles, David Marler is very good. Richard Dolan, in terms of a general historical kind of context, an overview of the history of ufology, I think he does have his flaws. I think he is a little bit naive in some sense of the word, but I think in terms of wanting to get caught up, up to speed. Richard Dolan's National Security State books are very good. The classics, Jacques Vallée is, to me, the most important ufologist of all time. Him and Alan Hynek, his mentor. Of course, Jacques Vallée was the character that Steven Spielberg based Lacombe, the French guy running around investigating UFO sightings. That's based on Vallée. John Keel, another one.
John
Keel.
Very
good, although some of his stuff is almost fictional. I think his insights and his work in analyzing and pointing out some of the more interesting elements of patterning and that sort of thing. Ivan Sanderson, very, very good. His book Invisible Residence is all about submerged UFO sightings. 50% of all UFO sightings are attendant to water, bodies of water.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, we've got to hear that music. We've got to take a break. So go grab a nice glass of wine or some hot chocolate. The best is yet to come. I'm Erica Lukes. You're listening to KCOR Radio. We will be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows, visit her website at UFOclassified.com. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back. Happy almost New Year's, my friend. Thanks for tuning in from all over the world. And I want to just give a shout out to Jeff Cox, who has been gone far too long in Japan. You need to get back here because we have a mass sighting case that took place in the summer, and it is just getting good. So I will, just to let you know, I'm going to be down in Phoenix for the UFO Congress in February, and I'm going to be talking specifically about that case and a few other cases in Utah and some things that Jeff and I have been uncovering. So if you're down in Phoenix, please stop by the UFO Congress and see my lecture. I think it'll be really good. And my guest tonight, I finally get to meet him in person because he'll be down at UFO Congress as well. Chris O'Brien is co-host of the Paracast, author of many good books that you need to put in your library, including Stalking the Herd and Stalking the Trickster. And he's been on lots of TV shows. He's just a really intelligent, funny, no-nonsense kind of guy. Chris, thank you for being here tonight.
Right. Yeah, to a fault.
No, but I love that. And I that's the thing that was so refreshing to me, to listen to some of your interviews on the Paracast and to listen to some of your lectures. I mean, you out of anyone, I mean, you've been down this road. You've seen a lot of the dysfunction in this whatever we're dealing with, and you understand how much that kind of crap takes us away from what we're really trying to focus on, which is figuring out what this is that is interacting with us.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think these subject matters, whether it's, haunted sites or crypto or ufological stuff, religious miracles, I think a lot of the people that are attracted to these subjects are in serious need of a social life. And I think that these subjects and gatherings of people around these subjects give common ground for people to meet each other and to establish social connections. The only reason why I go to conferences basically is to say hello to my friends and catch up on news and that sort of thing. Very rarely will I actually attend a lecture because, quite frankly, I pretty much know what people are going to say. I hate to sound as callous as that, but for the most part, I've either already heard their lecture years ago, like Stanton Friedman. I mean, how many times can you go see Stan the man?
I love him.
And learn new stuff. And again, there are a few exceptions. Greg Bishop is a premier thinker. Red Pill Junkie Miguel is another one that really has his head screwed on straight and is extremely, I think, aware and just has a crackling intellect. If people are interested in these types of subjects and really insightful, almost creatively amazing takes on all these types of subjects, the Paracast Forum has a community that, I mean, just drops my jaw. Every time I go there and start reading posts, I learn something. These people, they must not have much else to do in their lives because they come up with some of the most mind-warping stuff, really deep research, incredible, insightful takes on cases and phenomenal subjects and individuals. So, there are places to go to get quality information. You're not going to find it on your Facebook feed for the most part. Pretty rarely are you going to find anything worth note. Some of the internet hoaxer sites, I have a whole list of them that just contact me after class. I'll give you a whole list of sites to absolutely avoid because very rarely will you find anything on there that's worthy of notice. I could start spouting off all kinds of names. Third phase of moon would be a classic example of a site that's just there. And they admittedly, we had him on the show, one of the twins on the show. He says, well, this is just entertainment. And I said, well, you don't say that. You spout this stuff off like it's real. And people who don't have, a depth of awareness about these subjects are taking this stuff as real. Well, it's not my fault. That's their problem.
Well, no, but I think that people I think that people are intelligent, and I think if we just give people the right tools, and I think that's important, and I think that's where MUFON kind of misses the boat a lot, is they don't give people the proper tools, the public, the proper tools to identify mundane objects, to be empowered, to do a lot of the critical thinking on their own. And I think that, when we're going to Facebook chat rooms or going to different websites, you need to be careful that you're not following people that have a cult following. And, you need to critically step back and look at what's taking place. Is this person a disinfo agent? Are they just there to feed their ego? Are they being truthful with who they are, and how do they treat other people? I mean, there's so many questions we need to ask, and it's really vital that we don't hide behind the internet or a pseudonym, that we come forward, because as a researcher, I'm putting my name out here. I have a life. It is very, you could find out anything about me on the internet. Well, hopefully not anything, but I'm willing to do that, and you are too. It's a serious thing to me.
Yeah. I've always had a problem with avatars and anonymity, especially when people are publishing supposed, serious data that they're responsible for. Maybe not like an Isaac Coy who's digitizing other people's work. That it doesn't bother me that he's anonymous in that regard. But somebody who's publishing cases, who's actually going out and doing field work and stuff, if there's any sort of anonymity involved from the primary investigator, I have a real problem with that. Some of these whistleblowers, a classic example would be Anthony Sanchez and his UFO Highway, Colonel X, and the latest wrinkle in the underground Dulce base fiasco, for instance. Just doing due diligence on Colonel X, researchers found out that the guy's DD-214 was fraudulent. So when you have an anonymous source that his bona fides to establish who he actually is to the primary investigator, when those bona fides don't even wash, then you have some serious problems. And
right. And I want to just interject here for a second, because when you go back to the Isaac Coy thing, I think it would be one thing if it was just publishing archives, but when you're publishing, this case is a hoax, this is da 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 da, and then you need to stand behind your work with your name.
Yes and no. There's ways around that. You could have somebody else who's willing to be publicly acknowledged. You could create a scenario where your name isn't attached to the work. And again, I think most of what he points out is being hoaxes or being some form of misidentified natural phenomenon, for instance, or mundane explanation. I very rarely do I see anything I disagree with. So.
Yeah, and I guess, for me, and I mean, you and I, in fact, we started talking over this whole thing, because I'm like, okay, finally, I've got to call Chris. I've got to tell him kind of what happened with that whole thing. But
right.
The thing that was frightening to me to see is the fact that there were so many things taken out of context by this person and by his followers, and the fact that there were death threats involved, the fact that there were people that were threatening hacking. I mean, that's not cool. It's not legal.
No, it's not. And
at some point in
do
time,
get
this
very
anonymous.
impacted.
But if you're a respectable researcher in the field, you stand up and say that's not acceptable.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't think that's acceptable. This whole tawdry sort of junior high school mentality of leaping to people's defense, not knowing all the facts, and then lashing out of pure sort of knee-jerk response, as opposed to being mature and sitting on it and thinking about it, and then having more of a measured response. I think a lot of this it just smacks of junior high. And to me,
I think it's kind of grade school, actually.
Yeah, well, it's evolved grade school, so I give it at least junior high. It's really not doing the field. It's not doing us as individuals. It's not doing the subject matter, any service. It's detracting from it, and it's what turns people off to the field is all these clashes of personalities. People, really taking exception to people not, agreeing with them, that sort of thing. You really have to be as objective and dispassionate as humanly possible when you're dealing with such controversial subject matter. These subjects really do have a habit of being gasoline on people's smoldering fires. And so, and I kind of looking in the mirror saying this because I found myself inadvertently being involved in inflaming situations by some silly comment that was meant humorously but not taken that way. So, it happens to me all the time. It used to happen more frequently than it does now. I think I do attempt to think a little bit before I speak. And when it comes to naming names and that sort of thing, I'm very out front who I think is totally full of BS, and is just in it to create a cult of personality and to generate cash flow. I think it's pretty apparent after being involved in this field 25 years almost, which isn't that long compared to some people, but it's long enough to for a fairly bright guy to kind of get some insight into who's who and what's what and when to call a spade. I know practically everybody in the field, and if I don't, I know their best friend. So, once you've been in a position to meet and interact with a lot of the principals, you're in a much better position than the average person who doesn't have an insider, sort of inside baseball knowledge about people, about their theories, about the shortcomings of their theories, about possible compromising elements that are involved. Because I've been involved in so long, and with the Paracast, and I kind of make it my business to know. I mean, if I talked about a lot of the things that I found out, I won't talk about because, quite frankly, I don't want to drag this whole thing down any further than it's dragging itself. I do know a lot of dirt about a lot of things, places, people, things, situations, cases, which, I try to let out little hints here and there and get people looking in the right direction so somebody else will, spill the beans, so to speak. That's why I really do try to disassociate myself with the field of quote unquote ufology.
Right.
I go ballistic when I'm called that by TV shows, when I'm introduced that way. It's the last thing I want to be called, because of the tawdry junior high school nature of the field and people's problems. And I'd really like to kind of graduate a little bit here and sort of go beyond the subject. To be honest with you, it just kind of makes me itch places I can't find scratch.
It's good, and I think that I appreciate your candor with regard to this because I think people need to hear this and understand that this is going on. And I encourage people, as you do too, to get good information, to find resources and places and people that you can trust that have a critical mind and that care about the integrity of the work. And I love that about you. And with regard to all of the stuff that you've done, let's get back to some of the cool stuff, which are the hot spots. I mean, you've lived in the area, Crestone, Colorado, where all of these things were taking place, and then you did this great work to look at the military installations, do all of this, figure out what was taking place, and there were some quartz deposits that were close, right?
Yeah, geophysical properties is one sort of element that I look at when, looking at a particular location. If a lot of activity is being reported there, chances are activity has been reported there in the past. Chances are it has some sort of sacredness in the indigenous people's tradition. There's sacred sites there. There's places of pilgrimage. Quite often there's a government presence or military presence, and the geophysical properties, I think, may be at kind of the foundation of these places. Oftentimes you'll have a thrust, some sort of a rift or a fault, a large fault will be in close proximity, a fault line, an earthquake fault line. Oftentimes you'll have the interaction of maximum and minimum field strength in the Earth's magnetic field. You'll have zones of maximum field strength right next to zones of minimum field strength, and the seams between the two tend to be where a lot of activity tends to be reported, and ebbs and flows through there.
And I want to ask you about that because I was listening to one of your lectures and you were talking about that. If a researcher out there was interested in learning more about that, where would they start?
Well, the government does produce maps of aeromagnetic maps of all parts of the country, so you can go to the internet and look up aeromagnetic map for that particular region. The Geophysical Survey is one place that has these aeromagnetic maps. Now these are composite maps. What they do is they take aerial readings of the Earth's magnetic field, and then they come up with composite maps over a period of time. They'll do multiple readings and come up with a general look at the Earth's magnetic field in a particular region, and oftentimes you'll have gravitic lows. You'll have negative spaces, caverns, underwater aquifers. Like in Wilshire, for instance, would be a classic example of layers of water and clay and gravel and water, clay and gravel, which set up conditions for like a giant natural battery. And in these places where you have underground caverns, where you have aquifers, because the Earth is less dense there, that portion of the Earth's crust at the top of the crust, you actually weigh less. There's gravitic lows there. So, for instance, Jenny Craig should have her headquarters in the San Luis Valley because you actually weigh less in the San Luis Valley as you would further down, down towards sea level on, bedrock, let's say. So, I look at all these things, and there is that five bullet pointed formula that I look for, which is traditional sacredness, areas of sacred sites or areas that are considered sacred have been considered sacred for hundreds, thousands of years, waves of anomalous activity that tend to ebb and flow over time in these areas, and then give rise to subcultural traditions based around the activity. That's generally present. And then, unusual, the underpinnings of all of it is, unusual geophysical properties. And then oftentimes you have a nearby military presence, government presence, and in the real hotspot areas, not only is there a presence, but they're trying to expand that presence.
And that is so crazy. We're going I want to delve into this more, but we've got a caller on the phone, which is somebody I think that he has a question for us. So is the caller there?
He's there.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Chris, you might know who this is. It's your co-host.
Gene Steinberg.
I heard of him once. I just haven't figured out where.
Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard you call into a show. Wow.
I know.
Last time. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I told Gene that you were on the show, and I'm like, just call in and say hello.
Well, that's a short conversation. Actually, the last time I called anybody on the radio must have been about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel special then.
And after this, it's going to be another 30 years, I think.
Oh, God. What are you trying to say?
Oh, no, I am not disparaging anybody.
No, actually, Gene, I'm happy that you called in because I have to say, I think the Paracast freaking rocks, and I love the way that you ask the pointed questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
So Gene, tell us your best story about Chris.
I don't have stories about Chris. He is so unique. He's an original personality. You can't just reduce him to stories and anecdotes.
Oh, dang it. Well, it was worth a try.
Yeah, good answer.
Oh, come on. Your favorite Chris moment? You've got something.
My favorite Chris moment.
I know. That was heavy.
There's been so many.
That was heavy. There have been quite a few, yes. Anytime he confronts a guest and ends up knowing more than the guest about the topic being discussed.
Which is probably every show, though.
Well, I won't say this. I don't want to be crass, commercial, and all that stuff. But we have an episode coming up this weekend, in fact, on New Year's Day, although it'll be available, of course, forever after that, where we have a guest that I think was somewhat uninformed about a lot of the topic he was talking about, to put it mildly.
I had to hold myself back, Gene.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh. Well, needless to say, you've got my curiosity completely piqued, so I'll be listening to that show.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, my God. I just have to say, we're getting ready to go to break. But, Gene, bless you for calling in. I know you've got to rest up for, you've got 30 more years before you call in again, but I do appreciate it.
Well, at that age, I'll have to, it'll be hard to make my fingers work, so I'll have to use voice style.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. I'll help you out. And hopefully I can get up on the Paracast again, because I had a lot of fun, so. Okay, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
All right. We're going to take our last break for the evening, but I'd like to thank Gene Steinberg from the Paracast, great show, and Chris O'Brien for being here tonight. I am going to be right back, and the best is yet to come.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Woven throughout the universe are keys to a hidden message, awaiting a voice that can decipher their coded meaning, a cosmic connection to the cosmos. Tune in to the KCOR Digital Radio Network at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection with astrologers Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard. Your weekly astrology reading is but a phone call away. So call Cosmic Connection, Sunday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and get your free reading today. Cosmic Connection with Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him going on to fascinate millions with his talent? 1 in 260,000. The odds of this born racer having 157 career top 10 finishes in NASCAR? 1 in 125 billion. But every driver seeks the pinnacle of their achievements. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year? 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I'm NASCAR driver Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific, for Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back for my last break of the evening. I have to just say that I am having the best time tonight. This is a great way to get ready to start the new year. I hope that all of you have fun plans tomorrow night. I hope that you're safe and warm and surrounded by your loved ones. I want to thank all of you for supporting UFO Classified and sticking with me, because I really do this to give you guys information so you can make your own minds up, so you can be critical thinkers and you don't get caught in all of the nonsense that weighs you down from really looking at this objectively. Thanks for Gene Steinberg to call in. That was so cool, from the Paracast. And I want to just give it a shout out to Jeff Cox and Wayne Miller, UFO author, all of my friends, Libertas, that are in the chat room and are listening all over the world. You guys rock. I want to talk about my guest next week, who is Jeff Ritzman, who is, not a lot of people know about Jeff, but he is brilliant, and he is a paranormal researcher, but he looks at things in quite a unique way, and it reminds me of my guest tonight, which is Chris O'Brien, who is witty, funny. He's a musician. He has written many different books, Stalking the Herd, which we have not really even talked about tonight. But he was also the first researcher at Skinwalker Ranch. And we need to talk about that, because being the Utah girl, I would love to talk about the Chris. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we've, we were talking about so many things before we left, like the fault lines and the different, the aeromagnetic maps. But I want to talk a little bit about how that played out in the Uinta Basin.
Well, yeah, and it does. I haven't really looked at particular aeromagnetic maps, but knowing quite a bit about the geology of the Uinta Basin. It's one of the more unique areas in North America, in that it was the last major region that was covered by the Great Inland Sea from the primordial ocean that existed when all the continents were stuck together. And it was the last of the of the actual ocean in North America. Of course, the very last part of it was landlocked by the Wasatch and the Uinta Mountains, which is Great Salt Lake, right where you are. That would be the very last vestiges of that primordial ocean. But the whole center, and from the center part of Utah all the way down to the border with Colorado, and down into more into the Four Corners area, until fairly recently in geologic time, that was all underwater. And probably a series of catastrophic events, probably geologic events, earthquakes, that sort of thing, shifts in the plate there, allowed that water to drain out to the ocean. And so you have gravitic lows there, and you have probably maximum field strength areas in the mountains, and then right south of the Uintas, then you have your minimum field strength areas, and it's that seam that runs along the highway there that goes from Rifle and Vernal, all the way to the mountains, and then up and over to Salt Lake City. Which highway is that? Is that 50? What's the name of the highway there that goes through Duchesne and Roosevelt and Fort Duchesne? Say again?
I-15, I-80. Nobody lets me out to drive that much.
Yeah, it's the state highway that goes to Vernal.
Yep.
Anyway, from there south, then you have the area that was submerged until fairly recently, within the last 1 or 2 years, and it's just a magical area. That whole area, I think, as we were talking earlier today, I really have a sense that the Skinwalker Ranch is almost like a finger puppet. It's a red herring to keep people looking there. Similar to like Area 51, everybody's always talking Area 51. Let's keep our attention focused there. And Skinwalker Ranch is like that. Let's keep our attention focused there. And I really have a sense that further south, and then to the east in one sense, and then to the west, but south of that Fort Duchesne area is where the real activity is going on, and that the Skinwalker Ranch has become a bit of a red herring to keep people's attention focused there. The whole Uinta Basin is an amazing hotspot area, and anybody who's interested in the history of that area should get Frank Salisbury's book, the Great Utah UFO Display.
Yes,
that Salisbury and another investigator who's still hanging in there. We lost Frank, I think, about 1.5 years ago, and Junior Hicks is now in his 80s. He's hanging in there. He spent a great deal of time in the late 60s and all through the 70s documenting UFO reports and cattle cases and other things that happened there in that whole Uinta Basin area. It's a really amazing area. It's very similar in many ways to the area that I was in Colorado, the San Luis Valley. And the reason why I was even alerted about the Skinwalker Ranch case, and I hate using that term, I always call it the Sherman Ranch based on the name of the rancher, Terry Sherman, and his wife, Gwen. The Sherman Ranch case was, I was alerted to it by the reporter who initially broke the story, Zach Van Eck, who was writing for the Desert News there. He called me up because he found out that I was dealing with similar types of phenomenal events in Colorado, and he said, I got this rancher, I'm going to be releasing this story, and he could really use somebody to talk to and how to deal with all this stuff, and would you be interested in getting in touch with him? And this is June '96, so over 20 years ago. And I said, sure. And I called him up as soon as I got off the phone with Zach. And he said, man, I really need to talk to you. And I literally, the next day, I traveled all the way up there, 450 miles. It's the only case that ever drew me out of the San Luis Valley, really. And I went up there and spent the afternoon with him. And he laid this whole scenario, primary data, before any media had gotten involved, before there was any sort of contamination at all of the case. I was told, and he walked me around and showed me physical evidence and other things. And I was immediately struck by his sincerity, and the guy was really afraid. He was in fear for the safety and well-being of his family, his herd, his animals. He was at his wit's end. He said, I got to get out of here. Do you know anybody that would buy this place that would be interested in studying what's going on here? And of course, so there's only two people. There's Lawrence Rockefeller and this Robert Bigelow guy. And I said, I had Rockefeller's number already. I didn't have Bigelow's number, but I told him, look, I'll go home and I'll find these numbers and I'll immediately get them to you, because I'm sure one of those two will buy your ranch. And before I could even do that, Bigelow called him, I think the next day or a couple of days later, right after the article came out, and immediately set the wheels in motion for NIDS to get up there and stuff. And David Perkins, my mentor, who I'm writing my follow-up book to Stalking the Herd, was the last journalist to interview Terry before he signed the non-disclosure agreement. And that article is just a classic. It's called The Ranch from Hell. Just do a Google search, The Ranch from
Okay.
Hell, David Perkins. It's a classic article with all the primary in situ accounts that came right from the horse before all the publicity really took hold, and the whole thing blew into a huge circus and sideshow like it is today.
It's such an interesting thing, and I think just sitting back and watching the way everything played out is almost as curious as what's happening in that area. And I have to say that, as you know, and you mentioned earlier, it is not this activity it's not taking place just at Skinwalker. It's quite a considerable distance away from Skinwalker, and
Everywhere from the southern slopes of the Uintas all the way down to the Colorado border.
Exactly. And Junior Hicks, I mean, I was lucky enough there's a researcher that worked with Junior Hicks who sent me some of the investigations that they did together. And so I have some of
Who's
those.
Who's that, Ryan Layton?
No. It's another person.
Okay.
But I will tell you about that. But it was really interesting to see some of those. And these are back from the 70s, this is quite a while ago, but to see the high strangeness. And I mean, this is stuff that you would even look at today and go, what? But this goes back to kind of a point we were talking about earlier in the evening, which is we have to look at all the data. And sometimes you get reports where you've got the quinoa field where all the flowers are gone, and people are omitting things from the data. And I know that there are specific places in the world where researchers, really good scientists, are looking at all of this phenomena, but they're omitting, they're not putting into this what they need to, because they're purposefully leaving out data.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. Although there are certain little bits of data that I kind of hold back as, just how would I put this without sounding like I'm being well. Let's put it this way. There are certain types of descriptions that I don't publish because they're part of a set of information that I am always on alert for, particular ways of describing things, particular languaging that I'm always looking for. And I don't let people know what that is because I don't want to compromise that. And have it turn up by design, let's say. So there are certain descriptive elements that I look for. And, having interviewed thousands of people over the years, and a lot of ranchers, a lot of farmers and stuff, you kind of get almost a sixth sense about a person's veracity, about whether they're experiencing something high strange, number one. Number two, if they're interpreting it in a way that's skewed or that it has some sort of front loading behind it, or if they're just genuinely bowled over and perplexed. I mean, it only comes through experience, and you know this as someone that's been out in the field. It's only through experience and years of dealing with people who have been dealing with inexplicable events that you kind of get a sixth sense about a person's veracity, about their level of awareness. And generally people in the outdoors, farmers, ranchers, people that live in rural areas, they tend to be a lot more observant. They tend to be a lot more circumspect. They tend to be a lot more conservative in describing things and allowing the investigator to get a sense of how it's affecting the witness personally. So, after you go through this, and speak with hundreds of thousands of people, then you really start to get a sense of whether somebody is holding stuff back. I've had cases, quite a number of cases where I'll find out that somebody had an experience, and like a neighbor or family member will tell me, and I will contact them and say, hey, I was speaking with so and so, and And they told me that I should call and introduce myself, and I'll never say why it is that I'm calling. I'll talk about their kids, high school team, price of hay, the weather, and then I'll say, I just wanted to introduce myself. Talk to you later, bye. And I'll never ask them anything. I'll never even bring up that I know what it is that happened. But the very fact that so-and-so told me I should call and introduce myself, immediately they know why I'm calling.
Right.
Then I never say anything, and I'll work on them. I'll call, a couple 3 days later. Hey, it's Chris again. And I was wondering if you noticed that so-and-so's having a really good estate sale tomorrow, or whatever it is. I'll come up with some excuse to call, and then say, I just wanted to, say hi. I was thinking about you.
Right.
Bye.
And you're establishing rapport. You're building trust. And that's
invariably they'll go, okay, that's it. Okay, I'll tell you.
And that's brilliant. But that's
reverse psychology. And once you've been doing this for a while, you get a sense of how to approach people, to get them comfortable with the fact that you're calling them, especially if you have a local number that they can call. They know you're local. They know you're not there to somehow sensationalize their private lives, or to put them in a bad light or something. And that's why I had so many people open up to me, and why the law enforcement would have my number there. If somebody calls with this kind of report, tell them to call Chris. I was the unofficial deputy of weirdness for like 4 or 5 counties.
But that's good though, and that's the thing that I really respect about you. I mean, even when our first conversation together, I mean, you cared about keeping people safe. You cared about the integrity of the research. You cared about working together, and I think that is really a rare quality. Those are all rare qualities, and that's important to make people safe, because this is such a high gradient. This is such a strange thing to wrap your head around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when people are faced with something that totally changes their preconception about reality and totally blows them out of the water intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, they're very vulnerable, and they need somebody to talk to. And so oftentimes I would get calls from people who just wanted someone to talk to. And it's like, I felt a couple of times I described myself as like a paranormal shrink, like a counselor, that I was counseling people on how to integrate this particular inexplicable experience into their everyday lives, and how to help them and their families deal with this stuff. Especially in the cattle death thing, it's so spooky to find your best head of livestock cut up and mutilated in your ranch. You feel totally violated. You feel victimized. You feel like you're exposed, like it could be you or your family next. It brings up some really deep-rooted, very base, primal emotional responses in people, and I don't know. I have a knack for being able to diffuse, the situations, keep people, keep it light, keep it playful, so that people feel relaxed, and they ease into feeling more and more comfortable about something that they will never actually ever feel comfortable about. So, I guess I'm lucky that way, and that I'm a good communicator. I'm very intuitive. I've got some training, and how to talk to people and stuff, and I've just made it my business for a lot of years. I'm kind of retired from the field right now. It was just too much. I burn out. It just got to be too much. But somebody calls me and I have a really major case, nearby, I'll be the first one out the door. So, even though I'm kind of in a holding pattern, maybe one of the reasons why I moved to Arizona is because they don't have cattle mutilations here.
And I can't even imagine being on the front lines and seeing the things that you did, and knowing, I mean, the cattle ranchers are terrified. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to, they're losing. This is a considerable amount of money.
Yeah, well, they're pissed off too. It's all those things that you mentioned. It's like violation. It's a type of It's a type of violation, and they're angry. They're pissed off. Why me?
Right.
Why not pick on my neighbor? I mean, that guy deserves it more than I do. You know, it's you get a big burly rancher, processes his own meat, is a taxidermist, sees death all the time, and he's blubbering on your shoulder. Why did they take my best cow? They could have taken any of the others; it wouldn't have mattered. But this one, it kind of tugs at you.
No, it does, and I want to say, I mean, with regard to all of this, I mean, what percentage of this do you think is truly anomalous? 10%?
That's a tough question. It depends on what when you're talking about. At the very beginning of a wave, there's a much higher percentage of real cases. As soon as the cases start getting publicized, as soon as the media gets involved, as soon as investigators go out and start saying aliens did this, then every dead cow that somebody happens upon is mutilated, and then your percentage of real cases goes down. But at the beginning of a wave, before the media gets involved, before a lot of knowledge about the cases goes through the ranching community, those early cases tend to be the high strange ones, the ones that are much more scary, inexplicable. Those cases tend to be the real ones. And then you get into red herring cases that are done to possibly take attention off of the real cases, and then you have your red herring cases and even copycat cases occasionally. And then misidentified scavenger action. Every cow that's been, scavenged by birds or by, insects and maggot blooms, that sort of thing. Then, untrained eyes don't know what they're looking at, and it's bloodless laser cuts, and
Right.
These animals are drained of fluids, and blah 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 blah. It's a very, very complicated, no one size fits all scenario.
No.
That's
But
why stock
let's
in the
talk
herd
about
is so
uranium,
dangerous.
though. I mean, but you did mention, though, that uranium has a part to play in some of this.
Well, the areas of high incidence in North America are downwind and downstream of where we mine uranium, weaponize it, utilize it, put it into missile silos, have it in power plants. Downwind and downstream tends to be where, especially in the Midwest and east of the Rockies, west of the Mississippi. That whole belt there, and it's not just the 37th parallel, Chuck Zukowski. There's cases all the way down to Patagonia. We just had 40 cases all the way down almost to Antarctica a month ago. There's cases everywhere. They do tend to cluster downwind and downstream of where above ground radiation fell during the years that we exploded 100 above ground nuclear tests, and where we utilize uranium.
God, that is fascinating. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting too that the same places. I mean, you've got recurrent UFO sightings.
Yeah, but again,
You might not agree with me on that, but I mean,
again, in generally, yeah, sure, anywhere. But the fact that UFOs are seldom seen in conjunction with UFO cases, that you're more likely to see a helicopter than you are some sort of strange pulsating lights. Although there have been waves of activity where lights have been seen that could be described as UFOs, sure, but they're the minority compared to cases where nothing is seen.
Chances are, though, a rancher, I mean, you discover a cow that has been mutilated and it's been 24 hours, 48 hours. I mean, so that's a hard thing. But I know that the third generation cattle rancher that I have that's up in the Uinta Basin that will share information with me, I mean, he frequently sees that kind of anomalous light phenomena around and then have the cattle, something happened. So I don't know. The whole thing is so perplexing, and I have to just say that you, out of anybody, has done the most brilliant research with all of this, and your connection and research with the Native American people and the culture.
Yeah.
And looking at all of that is very deep, and that's incredibly important.
Yeah,
And
that's a really, I think, important part of my work, and the most difficult really, I'm least likely to talk about that part of my work because I'm not Native American and I don't feel it's my place.
No, but you understand that and you respect that. And I think that's a really good and important thing, because that is the connection right there to me that I feel we need to look at, is how do the indigenous people, I mean, people have been looking at this and dealing with this and interacting with this or putting it in a box for as long as we have recorded history. And so it's interesting. Yeah, and you understand that, and I love that about you. So tell people what you're going to be doing next.
Well, I'm working on a follow-up book to Stalking the Herd. Stalking the Herd is all the data, and the follow-up book will be analyzing all that data. And of course, you can tune in every Sunday night. And we have, a free archive of over 500 shows. The Paracast, TheParacast.com. And just keep your eyes open. I'm popping up on TV, here and there, and occasionally I'm invited. They let me out to do conferences.
Well, I'll see you in February, and thank you, everyone. I hope you have a happy New Year. Chris O'Brien, thanks for being a guest, and I will see you next Friday with Jeff Rickman.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows, visit her website at UFOclassified.com. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.